here, and I'm going to introduce you to our speaker tonight. Sheryl, if you were have been around a while, she's talked to us last year, about, I think June, about spiders. And people went, "Ugh," and they left here and they had a new respect for spiders. And some of them were pretty cute too, that she showed us. And this year, she's taken us on an exploration of flies. The flies of Texas. Oh my. I love the way she said about it. She said, once upon a time, I thought the word fly meant those pesky house flies, you know, but there's lots of different flies. How many are there? How many of you documented in her yard in Blanco? She's going to tell. She has she wrote an article in Texas Parks and Wildlife magazine about it, and that's how I found out about her. And I contacted her and I said, "Oh, please come and tell us, because there's a lot of birds that eat flies." So anyway, but she and her husband James, who's in the back there, they have a native plant habitat, and she blogs about it. It's called Window on a Texas Land, a Wildscape. And you can go on and look her up, and she's got all kinds of cool things on there. She's taken all these pictures. She's a master naturalist. She's documented 1,500 plant and animal species in their 1-acre yard. That's pretty cool. And she does so many things. She's a journalist, a photographer, and a naturalist. And you're going to love her like I do when you hear about the flies of Texas. So, Sheryl? Okay, her mic doesn't project into the room, it projects onto Zoom. So,
okay, so the first picture here, it's like, oh, wait a minute. Is it on now? Working? Okay. I shared that picture because it's just a fantastic shot of a fly. Didn't that get your attention? Right. So this is a fly that's from Costa Rica. And I just thought it was really cool. It's on iNaturalist. And I just thought I'm going to get everybody's attention. I'm going to show that picture. So let's get back, though, to Texas flies. So that's what we're going to talk mostly about tonight. These are some flies from our yard. Come on. So as Patsy mentioned, the idea for this program came, well, for one thing, in our yard, like she mentioned, I use iNaturalist. I'm always looking for new species. I mean, that's what I live for now, is looking for new species. And so through the years, since I think 2016, since I've been using iNaturalist, it's a great way to document species. And so I began to notice how many different flies, just not like a house fly, but all these different flies I was seeing. So right now, updated, it's 138 species of flies in our yard, which is about, as she said, an acre, but our house sits on, I guess, 2/3. And then we have the adjoining vacant lot, which we turned into the meadow. We're on 9th Street in Blanco. So we're talking about not big urban, but, it's urban environment. And we've planted primarily natives, native plants. So I know that's a big reason why, we have so many different kinds of species and insects. So then I became so intrigued with flies that I did write an article. I got the okay for Texas Parks and Wildlife, and that came out in 2 years ago. And so I used that article to kind of format this program to kind of give me an idea of how I was going to go about putting this together. So here in around the world, we have more than 158,000 different kinds of flies. And in Texas, we have about 5,100. And I'm sure that number goes up all the time, just because they're always described, just like with spiders, describing new species every year. So what is a fly? Just start out with the basic question there. So bees and wasps, they have 2 pairs of wings, and flies have 1 pair. So they belong to the order Diptera, which means 2 wings. So here's a fly on the left, and it's got, you can clearly see the 1 pair of wings, and then there's a bee and a wasp on the other. You can just kind of barely see the 2 pairs. But instead of hind wings, flies have something that's called halters. And on a crane fly, you can see really well these sensory organs that allow them to hover, and they vibrate, and they help them maintain balance when they're flying. So just basic anatomy on a fly. I mean, I really don't go into that either. I mean, the halters are pretty interesting. Of course, they've got the 3 body parts, like all insects. And then, the proboscis, they have the sucking mouth part too, flies, different kinds. But basically, that's what it's called. Okay, just like with spiders, everybody wants to know, right? How do you tell a boy from a girl? Well, with spiders, it's pretty easy to tell. With flies, it's a little more challenging. The best way is to look at their privates, but we're not going to do that, right? So look at the eyes, and a male, you can tell where the eyes meet, and on the female, they don't meet. Here's some, this clicker does not like me. So some examples on the left. Can you tell if that's a male or a female fly? That's going to be a female. And the one on the far right, female. And then the ones in the center, yeah. Isn't that interesting? Yeah. So talking about, yeah, speaking of eyes, so flies have little eyes, like more than 3,000 of them. I have to rely on my notes, that are called ommatidias. And they each contain their own lens and photoreceptor cells. So they kind of see mosaically, if you can think about that. And 360 degrees too. But yet they're nearsighted, so they can't see far away. They can only see close up. So flies can see at a rate of 250 to 350 megahertz or hertz, 4 times faster than humans. We see at about a rate of 60 hertz. So that's why that housefly, whenever you're trying to swat it, it's gone before you've even thought about it, what you want to do. So the 2 basic groups, I don't even need to really go into this, but that's what the scientists do. They put flies into 2 separate groups. And I guess crane flies and mosquitoes are a member of the I can't even say it. Please don't ask me to. The nematode. We'll just move on to the life cycle. So they have a complete metamorphosis, flies do. So they start out as eggs, and then they turn into larvae. And larvae, I'll just mention it, there's first instar, second instar, third instar. And so with each instar, they're shedding and growing, and that's their active stage when they're larvae. If you think about caterpillars, that's what caterpillars do too. And so by the time they finish their third instar, then they're ready to become pupa, and that's their resting stage. And that's during that time they transition into adults with wings. So generally, flies their life cycle is less than a year, and I think adults will live only a few months at the most. Just generally speaking. So with flies, first come love. And then, of course, after that, you have your eggs or your larvae, also called maggots. You know, we think about maggots. Crane fly larvae. These are some pictures that I've taken in my yard, our yard. So one time, and this is what I do, especially after supper, I'm wandering around in our yard and, you know, maybe watering a few little plants. And I've got my phone. I love smartphones now because you just whip it out. I've got a little pouch and I carry my phone in it. And then I bought a macro lens to put over it if there's something really small, and then I can take better pictures. But so anyway, I'm walking along and I see this thing sticking out from the ground. You see it on the left there. And I reach down and look at it, and I take some pictures and then put it back in the ground. I staged the photo there. I put it back where I found it so I could get a photograph. But that's the pupa of a robber fly, which we'll talk about later, robber flies. But I just thought that was interesting. So it had just, you know, come out of the pupal case. It had just emerged as an adult from the ground. So that's where it's pupated. Oh, come on. Oh, and since I'm a writer, about those common names, and I had this in my article as well because I had one of the researchers made sure that he told me to make a note of this, that for flies the names are always separate: house fly, robber fly. Whereas if you think about it, other insects, they're one word, right? Owl flies, dragonfly, damselfly, butterfly. So that kind of makes it easier to remember. You know, if it's a fly, it's going to be two words for the common name. So what's to like about flies, right? So, well, they pollinate, and they pollinate. Where did that go? My card. Well, I'll just have to do it by. Oh, here it is. They pollinate at least 72% of our fruits and flowering plants, like strawberries, blueberries, mangoes, avocados, apples. And there's a tiny midge called a chocolate midge that is the only pollinator of the cacao plant in rainforest. That's where we get our chocolate. And so that's the only thing that pollinates those particular plants. Um, and then there's a fancy name, I won't try to pronounce that either, for fly pollination. And they've got names for like when bees pollinate and butterflies pollinate, there's words for that too. But basically, that word down there, myophily, is that how you pronounce it, myophily? Those plants are going to produce a strong, yucky, you know, odor to attract those flies, so they'll get pollinated. Right. Do the best we can. So they're part of the food chain. You know, there's a spider eating a fly, a robber fly eating another fly, and of course they aid with decomposition in our landscapes. So what's not to like about flies? And this was a quote taken from their book, Common Insects of Texas and Surrounding States. They have the biggest impact on man than any other insect. And the reason why is because they, especially flies, especially those with aquatic larvae, you know, thinking mosquitoes, they spread about, was it 65 different diseases to humans. And that's because these flies, you know, those flies are on garbage and feces and just really nasty stuff. But then take a look. I always wondered why do they groom themselves? You know, there's a fly, and I got a video, and I asked that question. Well, they're doing that. They're rubbing themselves, wiping their legs over their eyes, over their wings, to take the to remove the dirt and the pollen and moisture, because that can interfere with their flight. So that's why they're cleaning themselves. So I thought, well, that's interesting. Now we know why. So, of course, the filth flies, they're the ones that spread so much diseases, like the blow flies and the flesh flies, stable flies. Um, So there's just some examples. But hey, wait, that's what threw me too when I was doing my article. Mosquitoes. Did y'all know this? Mosquitoes are flies? I didn't either. I didn't know that either until I started, doing the research. And so in our yard, and I make these little notes, so far I've documented 8 different species of mosquitoes in our yard. The Asian tiger, that's a non-native, as is the yellow fever mosquito. That's another bad guy. But the eastern tree hole, it's supposedly a native, and it likes to breed in tree holes and other natural holes that hold water. Because of course mosquitoes they need blood to produce their eggs. So here's a winter marsh mosquito, and they largely just feed on mammals, rarely on humans. This white dotted mosquito, I just added that photo this week because that was a new species. Are y'all ready for a video? It's interesting. It's kind of yucky, but it's really interesting.
This is the deadliest animal in the world. Mosquitoes kill hundreds of thousands of people each year. The most vulnerable people, children, pregnant women. No other bite kills more humans or makes more of us sick. A mosquito's bite so effective. For starters, they're motivated. Only females bite us. We need blood to make eggs. And the pool of water their babies to hatch in. Even a piece of trash not old enough. At first glance, it looks simple. A mosquito digging her proboscis into us. But the tools she's using here are sophisticated. First, a protective sheet from trap. It's bending back. If you look at a mosquito's head under a microscope, you can see what that sheet protects. And inside there are 6 needles. 2 of them have tiny feet. She uses those to saw through the skin. They're so sharp, you can barely feel her pushing. These other 2 needles hold the tissues apart while she works.
Isn't that interesting?
And under the skin, you can see her probing, looking for a blood vessel. Receptors on the tip of one of her other needles pick up on chemicals that our blood vessels exude naturally and guide her to it. Then she uses this same needle like a straw. As her gut fills up, she separates water from the blood and squeezes it out. See that drop? That frees up space to stuff herself with more nutritious red blood cells. With another needle, she sticks chemicals into us. They get our blood flowing more easily and give us itchy welts afterwards. And sometimes, before she drives herself away, she leaves a parting gift in her saliva. A virus or a parasite that can sicken or kill us. There's nothing in it for her. The viruses and parasites are just itching our ride. This is what makes mortal enemies of us. They take our blood. Sometimes we take theirs. Often not.
Wasn't that interesting? Yeah. I know it's kind of yucky, but it's just, I never knew that. Here's a little video that I took because you saw the wigglers in that previous video. Well, they breathe through these siphons in their rear end. So that's why the wigglers come up to the top and they're breathing air and then they go back down. So I got a little video of that. I think you can see a pupal case of a mosquito to the left there, one that's already emerged. And so that's the empty case. But I just thought that was interesting. Okay, so not all mosquitoes are bad. Believe it or not, here is the elephant mosquito. and it's very large. It was taken in our yard. And these mosquitoes do not feed on blood, so they don't bite us. The larvae feed in, they're aquatic, right? So their larvae are feeding on other mosquito larvae. And today, when I was kind of reviewing all this material, I thought, well, why don't they, feed on blood then? What makes them different? Well, when they're larvae, they're actually storing up enough protein to when they turn into adults, the females have enough protein to produce eggs. They don't need blood. They already have the protein that they need, and they're getting that protein from the other larvae that they're eating. So that's a good mosquito, and they're pollinators too. So love bugs. Did y'all know love bugs are flies? And this kind of defeats, they're not even bugs. All insects are bugs. Let's see, all bugs are insects, but not all insects are bugs. And here's a love bug that's not even a bug, it's a fly. So let's just really make things, complicated. But they're also called March flies. They swarm in April and May and August and September. And the pairs mate tail to tail, and then the eggs, they lay them in swampy areas and ditches, and they pupate in the soil. And they don't sting or bite, so they're completely harmless. But how many of y'all have been on a highway when the love bugs are swarming? And oh, talk about a mess. I was coming back from a magazine assignment, and I had rented a car, thank goodness, for some reason, coming back from the east, and the love bugs were swarming. And when I took the car back to the Austin airport, I felt so sorry for those guys, because it was like a red Toyota Corolla, and it had all this black stuff, over the hood from all those love bugs that I'd hit. So those little nasty gnats, midges, they're flies too. So the little fungus ants, gnats on the left, they're very small, delicate flies that look like mosquitoes. They occur near damp areas, and they can be a problem in greenhouses. And of course, we've got our midges and galls. Galls are formed by egg-laying insects. The larvae chew into the plant tissue, and then that stimulates the plant to make more hormones, and it creates these galls. And that's where the larvae are inside. And even those no-see-ums that, oh, I hate those things. And those are flies. And today I was wondering too, why do they bite? They bite because they need the blood for eggs, just like mosquitoes. So, boy, they are bothersome. So just to talk about some common flies, of course, the house flies, and we associate those with the, garbage. And they're the ones that transfer the pathogens, because, of course, they're in poop, and they're in garbage. They're just in really nasty stuff, and then they might regurgitate or poop as well. So that's how they're spreading germs. And some of these, like the stable flies and face flies, they can lay the what they call them, eye worms in livestock. So they're really and pink eye to cattle. So they're really not nice. Texas on iNaturalist, I'll go in and then just search like the family, and then do Texas and see how many species around the state have been observed, and then 13. Thank you. That's why I have that at the bottom, just to kind of give you an idea of how many around the state, other observers. So bristle flies, this is the second largest fly family, and these are larger than a house fly, and they usually have bristles. Okay, so here's another interesting thing about flies. They have different ways of reproducing, and they're young. So these guys, they deposit their egg or glue it to a host, and then the larvae burrow into the host like a beetle or another insect, or they might deposit eggs that contain fully developed first instars. We talked about the first instar, And so the eggs are laid near the host or on the host or on a plant that the host eats. So in other words, it might eat, the larva, and then the larva is inside and grows inside of the host, and it may crawl away or pupate inside. So I'm going to tell you about other fun things like that too, other flies. Um, but they're really interesting looking flies, don't you think? Oh, and you can see the halters on the middle one there. Here's our cover girl. So blowflies, these are shiny flies. They're really kind of pretty in a way with bristles. And the females, they deposit eggs on like dead animals, poop, or on an animal. And the maggots will eat the dead, the dead stuff or the poop. And then, but some eat living tissue, such as screwworms. Y'all have heard about screwworms. But the adults, and you can even see here, they're pollinating. They eat nectar and then they pollinate as they go. So I found 6 different species in our yard so far. And so scientists, I'm sure you've heard of this too, where they use maggots to determine the death, like of a corpse. The forensic detectives, I guess, they go in there and look to see as far as the instars or the development of the flies. And the hairy maggot blowfly can detect a body 10 miles away. Like vultures, vultures have such a wonderful sense of smell, right? And, but wow, 10 miles. That's amazing. So vinegar flies, have y'all seen these little bitty flies? I used to catch these back in the day in the 90s when I was raising tarantulas, spiderling babies, and I had to go out and catch fruit flies to feed them. They were that small. So if you put out rotting fruit, which is what I did, I put out bananas to catch my fruit flies to feed my tarantulas. um, but really, the true fruit flies are really pretty with their wing patterns. Um, and they also like to feed on rotting fruit. So 7 different species in our yard. In about 2017, this is on my blog, I took pictures of this fly. And I thought, wow, this was before I was kind of interested in learning more about the diversity of flies. And come to find out, as I was doing my research, either for the magazine or for the article or for this program, that this particular species hosts or their larva develops in thistle flowers. So that's why that fly was on this thistle, which makes, a lot of sense now, but I didn't know it then. So, and that was a pretty small little fly. Horse flies. This showed up. It's the only time back in 2019, and it was a big fly, and it looked pretty scary too. Female. You can tell that's a female. And so many female horseflies, they do bite. They have scissor-like mouth parts that cut open the skin, and then the fly laps up the blood for we know why she's drinking the blood. But they really prefer to bite cattle and other livestock, so they rarely will bite us. But they can transmit diseases such as anthrax. And the males are completely harmless. They'll feed on nectar and pollen. I had one in the yard, so that was fun. Large crane flies. Now these look like mosquitoes, right? And this is the kind of fly that you can really see the halters on too. Their larvae are called leather jackets, and I found one in the yard. You can see one on top there. And the larvae feed on decaying plant tissues, and they can damage your grass, the roots of grass. But generally, they're beneficial soil dwellers. So, oh, there's the halter. So some extra cool flies. The first time I saw this fly in our yard, the club Midas fly, I thought it was a wasp. It looks like a wasp, right? They're really large flies. They can measure up to 1.25 inches. They have the clubbed antennas. That's why they're called, this one's called the club Midas fly. They may even curl it and jab their abdomen like they're going to sting you, but of course they can't because they don't have a stinger. The larvae, they feed on beetle grubs in the soil and in rotting wood. And then the adults, they feed on nectar and pollen, so they're pollinating too. Robber flies. I love this group. And the name of this robber fly here, Beelzebub, that's another name for Satan. And this one on the right, yeah, I guess that's a she. She's feeding on a June bug, a green June bug. And you know how big those are, right? This is a large fly, but it's harmless. So robber flies, they like to hang out in lofty places. This is a tiny little robber fly. I just was so amused the first time I saw this species, and it was sitting on the tip. That's a salvia plant, and it was tiny. I mean, it was just sitting there doing what robber flies do. They sit and they wait in some lofty place for some insect just to go flying by, and then they fly out there and grab it with their legs and then go back to a spot and start feeding on it. So here's some other robber flies from our yard. You can see one landed on me. That's on the top there left. Sometimes I get to have insects land on me, and then I have some great pictures. So they also, these aren't my photographs, but some of these robber flies mimic, as you can see, like a damselfly, wasps, and bees. They're pretty good mimics. You can see there in the pictures. So I took this picture at Guadalupe River State Park several years ago, and this is a robber fly, a group of them that are called hanging thieves. So when they feed, they're actually hanging by one or two legs as they're eating. And that's why they're called that. There's a giant robber fly, prairie robber fly, and I just put a picture there. I think we do have these in Texas. Pretty big fly, robber fly. Those soldier flies, they're called that because the colors they reminded somebody of military uniforms. Does that do anything? Do y'all think about uniforms when you look at some of these? I don't know. But the first time I saw that green fly, and a lot of flies you'll notice don't have a common name. They just have their scientific name. So that one on the top left there, which I thought was such a beautiful fly, and I was so amazed the first time I saw one. But it doesn't have a name of its own. Some of these have aquatic larvae. The black soldier fly there's some companies that use the larva of this species to make products that are called mag meal, mag oil, and mag soil. And they're using it to manage organic waste, provide nutrients for plants and animals, and reduce housefly infestations. And they're farming these larvae, the black soldier larvae. Pretty interesting. The larvae chew through the organic material, and they can double their weight in one day. So bee flies, these are really cute, and they vary from fuzzy bee mimics to hairless humpback flies, which, let's see, here's some from our yard. 14 species so far in our yard. There's a humpback over there, and they don't bite or sting, and they have a long thread-like mouth part. So the fun thing about some of these flies, the bee flies, is that the females can fling their eggs from their abdomen into the burrows of like solitary bees or other ground nesting insects. And then the larvae crawl inside, and then they feed on the host's young. And here's a short video of a bee mama. And if you watch, you can see her flinging her egg. Here she goes. Pretty good, huh? Okay, keep going. Yeah, somebody was waiting and got it just at the right moment. Hoverflies, they hover erratically. near flowers looking for mates and predators, and they're also called flower or cyprid flies. And the larvae of a lot of these species feed on aphids, and one can eat as many as 40 aphids before it pupates. Let's see on the third side. So the hoverfly, where's the hoverfly? There's some more hoverflies from our yard. So the four speckled hoverfly, I was outside, this was recently, and I was noticing these hoverflies near the Talayote vine, which is a milkweed vine, and they had a lot of oleander aphids, and I was squishing them. I mean, because they're not really native, and we had a lot of them. But then it's like, then I realized why that hoverfly was hanging around that vine, because of all the aphids, and it was going to lay eggs, so then the larva could feed on the aphids. So it's just neat how, you start learning and you put pieces together, and how everything, they're there for a reason, not to just have their picture taken, So, oh, and so here's some of the on the hoverflies, they have they're called rat-tailed maggots, and so they're kind of like mosquito larvae, and they're breathing out of the tube. And so this is when this larva turns into adult, this is what it'll look like, a yellow-shouldered dronefly, which that's my pictures, but I've never seen a red-tailed maggot. Haven't gotten to do that yet, but isn't that different?
Good word.
Yeah. So the first time I saw this, the eastern hornet fly, I thought it was a yellow jacket. I even ID'd it on iNaturalist. That was my first, was a yellow jacket. And then come to find out that it was a fly. Looks like a male. And so here's a yellow jacket hoverfly. Isn't that amazing there? I mean, that does look like a yellow jacket. Yeah, and they don't sting. Right, right. So picture wing flies, I think they're really pretty. They have these striking patterns on their wings, and I've seen some of these in our yard. And I borrowed some pictures to help kind of better illustrate this family. Signal flies, not a lot to say about them. They're usually metallic colored, and when they're crawling or courting, they outstretch their wings. I actually got a video of this out in the meadow. Just interesting behavior, just flapping its wings and turning around, and doing a little grooming there too. Interesting looking fly too. In the meadow on some grass, yeah. So that's why I'm always on the lookout for something going on, or a new species, or I can pretty much now look at something and say, oh, I've already got you, I don't need to take a picture. Dance flies, these are small flies with long legs, a round head, and red eyes, and a curved abdomen. Now, here's something interesting. I've only seen this one species, and I have not seen this before, but I sure would love to. So when these flies, when they're swarming and they're mating, the males may present an insect wrapped in silk as a nuptial gift. And there's a picture of, a lot of males there. I'm borrowing these photographs, and they've all got their gifts, that they're carrying, that they're going to give to the female. But sometimes the sacks are empty. You can see one over there on the right. The little balloon's empty. So we don't know if he found a lady or not, but
Where do they get the silk?
I don't know. That's a good question. I don't know. I've got to write that question down. I guess it's something maybe they just regurgitate, I would imagine. Yeah, yeah. So, and then you see these little squiggles sometimes in plants. So those are leaf miner flies. Not, I guess, probably not all the time, but little tiny flies that lay their eggs, and then the the larvae just tunnel through the leaf surface, and they grow and feed, and sometimes they'll eat the seeds and the stems too. Rust flies, only seen one of these. It's kind of an interesting looking fly. Stiletto flies. This does look like a robber fly, but they're little narrow of an abdomen, and their larva, which I'm pretty sure that's what this was that I found. Looks like an earthworm. And so the larvae, they actually feed on the larva and pupa of other insect larvae in the soil. And of course, the adults, they nectar on flowers. Feather-legged flies. These are really pretty flies too, and they have kind of like a fake pollen basket on their back legs. Let's see. There's some others in our yard. So, females, here's another reproduction, or what should we say? I guess reproduction. So the females hang out their flowers, as you can see, and they look out for bugs. They like real true bugs, stink bugs or squash bugs. And they deposit their eggs on the underside of these bugs. And only one larva survives, and it bores into the body, and then it feeds on the bug's fluids for about 2 weeks. And then it grows to the size of the host body, and then it emerges. Of course, killing the host kills the host, and then at the third instar. These are my notes. But it may overwinter in the second instar. But anyway, basically, they feed on bugs, the larvae. Long-legged bugs, the males display their legs prior to mating. And so these guys, the larvae, they pupate in cocoons that are made of soil particles cemented together. And that reminded me of the Texas pebble bee, which I've seen in our yard. It's on my blog. I watched it, and the bees actually took little tiny pebbles and cemented them together and made a little house. But I have not seen the cocoon of any of these flies. I'd like to. So here's some different flies, the moth flies. Have y'all seen these? They look like moths, don't they? But they're flies, and they hang out near sewer drains, pot plants, swamps, and they're harmless. This is some in our house. And this is just weird. I just found this fly, and it looked like it'd been stabbed. So this landed on me. We were sitting out in the backyard, I guess. In our neighborhood, we do have white-tailed deer. So this is a fly, it's called a deer kid. And so the males and the females feed on the blood of white-tailed deer. And so this is different. Then they shed their wings once they're on a white-tailed deer. And so after mating, she produces one larva at a time, and the larva stays in her and feeds from milk secretions in the fly's body in her uterus. I don't know. That's what I read. So 3 instars later, after it's gone through the metamorphosis, she births a white prepupa. So it's not really a pupa yet, which then darkens and forms that shell. And that pupa falls off the deer, and then usually where the deer are sleeping. And then once the adult comes out and it has wings, then it takes off to find a deer. So this guy that landed on me was looking for a deer. So then the cycle starts over. The fly lands on the deer, sheds its wings, drinks blood, mates, So yeah, it was new to me. I mean, when that landed on me, I'd never seen this before. And that's the only one I've seen since. So freeloader flies, they're kleptoparasitic. And they like to hang out. They're attracted to insects and spiders that are feeding on honeybees. And so this crab spider, this poor crab spider, was in our mist flower, and you can see all these little flies. And the crab spider does have a honeybee. That's what she's feeding on. And these little flies are coming around and trying to get in on it. Um, Scare. Now, I have not seen this, but I just thought it was a very interesting fly. And so what these flies do is they fly after beetles that are flying. And they lay their eggs on a beetle's back under their wings, the elytra, and then where the beetle can't reach it. So then the eggs hatch and the larva enters the beetle, and then from there what happens. The beetle doesn't make it. Yeah. Golden flies. I just thought this was a beautiful fly. I don't know anything about them, but they're really cool, tiny flies. They have their own family. So here's some other flies from Texas. I have not seen these, but I just thought they were interesting, and they've been observed in Texas. Yeah. Now I saw the first one I saw. Well, all these I saw in Arkansas. So I have not seen them in Texas. The snipe flies. Well, I guess there are a few species in Texas, but I just thought that's a beautiful fly. And this was downtown on a wall in Eureka Springs, the one on the left. And then of course there's a mating pair. And I was looking closer at that picture on the right, and you can see the male would be at the bottom, right? If you look at the eyes, you can see, and then the female, she's on top. But that is really, the gold was just like gold jewelry or something. These are just interesting flies, just stalk-eyed flies. Don't ask me why they're shaped like that, but the one up there at the top, each eye is farther from the body than the body is long. The one on the top right. Just very odd looking. So the fly that has the longest tongue, the proboscis, is this fly from South Africa. And it has, if we were this fly, our tongue would be 19.6 feet long. So that is a very long tongue. So the world's largest fly is the Midas fly. And this one is 2.8 inches in length and with a wingspan of about 4 inches. Nice to meet you, Alexis. Bye. And I just thought this was interesting. I've never seen this, a big-headed fly, but there you go. Yeah, bat flies. These live in the fur of bats, and they move very fast. They're wingless, so the larvae, like the other flies, they remain in the mother until they're ready to pupate, and they feed inside the mother on a milk gland. And then the mother leaves the host, the bat, and to find a place to birth her larva, which I think would be like in a cave or wherever the colony is. And then she returns to the host. And so I really need to remove the photographs on the right, because those are bat bugs. They're not flies. But we had an evening bat in our yard last year, and I observed these little bugs on it, which I just thought, ooh. So those are bat bugs. They really don't belong in my presentation. So the frightful hairy fly. Some people think this looks like a spider. It's the rarest spider in the world. I'm sorry, the rarest fly in the world. It was collected in 1933 and in 1948, and then it was discovered again in 2010. It's also called the frightful fly. And it cannot fly. It has non-functional wings. It breeds in bat guano. And it's thought to live only in the bat-filled cleft of one rock, and it's never been found anywhere else. So I just thought that was interesting. Frightful hairy fly. Okay, so if y'all saw my spider presentation last year, and my grand finale is the peacock spider, and I have a great video that goes with it. So of course I had to include that in my fly presentation. So here are peacock flies. And if you want to guess, what do peacock flies do? Well, they kind of do what the peacock spider does. So yeah, and I think we have, yeah, they're a picture wing. They're in the family of picture wings flies. So there you go. So my favorite fly is, uh-oh, wait a minute. Oops. Wait a minute. It's actually the longhorn cactus fly. That is my favorite fly. These guys, as you can see, it landed on me. I like to say it was kissing me, but it the first time I saw one of these, it landed on me. And then when we were in the house, I think it was on me in the house. And then it came back the next day. I mean, it was just a really cool little fly. And so they're in a family, they call them banana flies, and we've got about 3 species that have been observed in Texas. But that's my favorite fly. Here's some more pictures of my favorite fly. So that's the end. So I have a, well, it doesn't show up very well in blue. There's a little, do y'all want a little bonus? Should I show the little bonus? This is something from James. So since I do spiders and flies. Okay, my three questions.